Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday evening or Sunday morning or in some cases Monday, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be here for the next 2 hours live. It is the 15th day of February 2009. Well, Barack Obama said that not 1 minute could be wasted. They absolutely had to have the $800+ billion spending package passed immediately, or we would have a depression. And there was a big debate Thursday and Friday that no one had been allowed to see the bill or read the bill. The bill was made public 1 hour before it was finally passed. It had been in conference between the House and the Senate. 1 hour later, the 1,100+ page bill, 1 hour after it was made public, was passed. And then Obama said, I'm going on a 3-day vacation, but that's not enough. I'm then going to sign it maybe next Thursday in Denver. Maybe. It's a big joke on everybody, going back to the end of George Bush's days, back in early October 3rd to be precise. They said, no one can read the bill, no one can see the bill. We've got to have the banker bailout, $700 billion. It really turned out to be $8.5 trillion so far. That's Bloomberg AP. It's just unlimited. No one can read it, no one can see it. It's got to pass now, or we'll have a depression next week. Then on Saturday, the day after it passed, October 4th, Secretary of the Treasury at the time, Mr. Paulson, said, you know what, we don't even need it for mortgages anymore. We're not going to say what we're going to use it for. This is on record. In fact, they came before Congress. I have the testimonies. It's in my upcoming film I'm making, The Obama Deception. And Obama's people, they bragged that the Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, was the, quote, architect of the bailout and honchoed it through the House and Senate when he was a Democratic leader in the House. He just resigned a few months ago. And, of course, both parties are involved because they're both owned by the offshore banks. The issue here is they didn't want anybody reading the bill. And you know why they didn't want you reading the bill? It has health care rationing in it. It says that the elderly will not be given basic health care. Tom Daschle literally wrote the legislation, and he wrote a book about it 2 years ago saying, yeah, old folks just have to accept that you're not meant to be treated for these ailments. And so rationing of health care, in the past they would deny that with socialist health care, but they say it's the British model where people wait 18 months for brain tumor surgery and, of course, die for treatable brain tumors and things like that, or you could have a couple $1,000 surgery on your eyes, but they just let you go blind. Things like that. And Bloomberg did a report on this, and we covered it on Friday. You can actually read the subsections because that subsection of the bill was made public because they had tagged it on and admitted they tagged it on the larger bill. It was the bill, the entirety of the bill itself that was a secret. Remember 2 years ago they said, oh, it's a secret bill on fixing immigration, fixing it. No one can see it, but trust us, there's no amnesty. And then Senator Sessions violated Senate rules and got in trouble for it, but thank God he did, and leaked the bill. You can Google 20 loopholes in immigration bill, and you can read the 20 loopholes from 2 years ago. And it was worse than total amnesty for 30 million illegal aliens. It allowed felons who were felons to stay here. It allowed anyone who wanted to come for 6 years to come here instantly legalized. So it was more than just an amnesty for the, quote, 14 million they claimed were here. Though Congress has even studied the problem and said over 30 million. So this is the type of deception that we see. But here's the big issue. I got a call Friday and then another call Saturday from the same congressional source that told me they'd been threatened with martial law back in October of last year if they didn't pass the bill. And we reported the martial law threat before it was on the news. Then it ended up coming out on C-SPAN, the floor of the House, and then made national news. Just like a year and a half before, it was made public that the federal government secretly hired now 26,000 preachers training their flock to go to FEMA camps, to turn in their guns, to submit to government. Romans 13, people didn't believe us, and then a year and a half later it came out in mainstream news and is now public. This congressional source, it's always been accurate, said that gun control, more gun bans, particularly H.R. 45, total national gun registration, psychological testing to own a gun. If you've ever had a misdemeanor, you can't own a gun. that had been introduced and tagged on through a part of the health spending bill. Well, last night, I went ahead and spent 3 hours reading most of the 1,100-page bill. Remember, we didn't get it till an hour before it passed, and I was on air at the time, and then Friday went home and saw my family, and then didn't get around to reading it until Saturday. And yes, that congressional aid was correct. Now, you'd say, why doesn't the aid just go public? Because under House rules, they get in trouble. See, they didn't have these House rules 100 years ago. It's now a dictatorship of the committee chairman. And so they're in these meetings. They're not allowed to tell the public when it's in conference. So they have to leak this to us, just like Senator Sessions did and others. First, he leaked it. People said it wasn't true. Then he just released the bill. And legally, he's really allowed to. It was just a Senate rule in that case. But regardless of that, they stripped out the language about guns, but left the H.R. 45 language on the mental screening in there for total federalization of all medical records and to make all the psychologists and psychiatrists going back 30, 40 years to load all these records in. So let's say in high school you went to the psychologist because your parents were, upset because you were depressed and were popping your zits or whatever. Well, now you don't get to own a gun. All the military medical records, they've already done this to some extent, but now all the military records, any psychological designation for any reason, you don't get a Second Amendment. And a lot of police are going to be losing their peace officer's license. I warned you. Now, we'll see if they're able to implement this, but the language is in there. And last night, I almost did an emergency broadcast. I got my board ops down to the station. I was about to go on air, and I just said, you know what? I got to go finish this Obama film. A bunch is going on. I've got this congressional aid warning me high level. But I'm going to wait and see if any of the gun groups pick up on this because I can always cover it Monday. It's already passed. So I didn't go on air at like 11 o'clock last night after I'd been reading the bill and confirmed it. And then I went to Gun Owners of America this morning. Sure enough, they're on to it. It's a headline on their site. So not just Alex Jones saying it. We now have it right here from Gun Owners of America. Pork bailout bill could ban guns for millions of Americans. This from Gun Owners of America, the second largest gun organization, Second Amendment group in the United States with, 300,000 members. So they analyze it and warn you right there. So there you have it. You don't have to go off my secret congressional source. They picked up on it, so it's there for everybody to see. There's a bunch of other gun banning and gun restricting and ban all semi-autos, most handguns, most rifles. There's another bill where the Attorney General can just give an order and ban any guns he wants, like he's a petty god or something, some demigod. And don't think they won't try to pass that, because what did the bill they passed on October 3rd of last year say, known as the banker bailout? It was really a banker takeover. It said in the subsections, and we've read this on air many times, that no agency, no group of government, no one can look into these numbers. It is secret. So Congress passes a law handing over their authority and ceding some letter of marque to offshore private banks to literally be above the law. That's fraud. They can't do that. But they did. And now I have all these congressional hearings the last few months where they call up Federal Reserve Chairman in New York, the Fed Chairman himself, Bernanke, and they just say, we don't have to tell you. And then Greenspan goes on Lair NewsHour and says, we're above the law. No one can investigate us. We've played that clip before. You can just Google Greenspan, Fed above the law. You'll see Lair NewsHour. There's a bunch of other stuff in the bill. It is a total nightmare, but that's why they wanted to rush it through so nobody could read it, just like the Patriot Act. We're going to cover all this when we get back and take a lot of phone calls. And we have a big guest coming on with a huge story about FEMA camps and mass graves. That's right. The children of the beast are the ones taking over our country, our world. That's all we see throughout history is tyrants, corrupt, wicked criminals getting control of government and then taking control of societies and doing horrible things. Now remember, it had to be passed. No one could read it. They couldn't even have one day to look at the 1,100-plus page bill. For the last 2 weeks, they wouldn't let the public see it. They kept changing it. It kept going back and forth between the House and Senate. The Revitalization Act, the stimulus bill, it had to be passed. 800 and something billion, but it has mandates in it, according to CNBC, of over $9 trillion in the next 4 years. So it's really a $9 trillion, quote, stimulus. It's really a expansion of federal takeover of the states, where they take our tax money, then bring it back into the states for control. And then, well, I mean, here's an article right here. What's the rush? Urgent stimulus on hold for the Obama's weekend off, after pushing Congress for weeks to hurry up and pass the massive $787 billion stimulus plan. President Obama promptly took off for a 3-day holiday getaway. Obama arrived at the home in Chicago on Friday and treated his wife to a Valentine's Day dinner downtown last night. The couple was spotted leaving upscale Table 52, which specializes in Southern cuisine.